domino just fell after the Michael Cohen raid in a piece describing a settlement that allows former Playboy playmate Karen McDougal to tell her story about an alleged relationship with Mr. Trump. While her legal battle was with the owner of the National Enquirer, her case is intertwined with the pattern of hush money and deals and intimidation tactics that our next guest knows all too well. Michael Avenatti is the attorney for adult film actress Stormy Daniels, who, of course, is at the center of one of the battles Mr. Cohen is fighting at this hour. You sent out a tweet that made me spit coffee on myself, so I'm going to read it to you and have you elaborate a little bit. See below, as I have been stating for weeks, this is what happens when you pick the Pink Panther as your fixer and trust him with all of your secrets. No disrespect to the Pink Panther and your signature basta. Please elaborate.
Well, you know, one of my Twitter followers actually pointed out that the reference to the Pink Panther was a mistake because the Pink Panther was actually competent. It was Inspector Clouseau that was the incompetent one. So, you know, it was probably a little too early this morning when I sent it out. But, you know, just as I said, Nicole, I mean, I've been saying this for weeks. I think 3 weeks ago I said that ultimately he was going to be indicted and he was going to flip on the president. I was the first one to call it. And now, you know, people that are close to the president are telling him the same thing. I mean, I think the story in the Wall Street Journal about his counsel telling the president that Cohen is not even a 1 on a scale of 1 to 100 as to individuals that would protect him speaks volumes. I mean, this is a very, very serious matter for the president at this point. There's no question that Michael Cohen knows where many, many bodies are buried. They are going to turn him, and when they turn him, the president is going to be in a very, very bad place. And I'm going to make a prediction now. I do not think the president will serve out his term. I just don't.
Do you think he's promised a pardon to Mr. Cohen?
Well, I think he may have alluded to it, and I think that raises some interesting questions, as one of your other guests mentioned. But the problem here is this is not happening in a vacuum, and it's not happening after the fact. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is they've now effectively telegraphed. Everyone and their brother knows that that is a possibility. And I have to believe that the Attorney General of New York and others are going to take precautions to guard against that. Federal prosecutors are not going to go through this entire process only to have the rug pulled out from underneath them due to a presidential pardon. They're not going to do it. There's going to be some level of cooperation or communication with the New York Attorney General. They're going to be very careful in the charging decisions that they make. They're going to leave some openness or some window, if you will, for the New York AG to charge him with a state charge so that they can guard against it. The pardon aspect only works if it takes place after the fact, if he's after he's convicted, if no one really knew that was a possibility. But they've set themselves up for failure yet again, in my view.
You just said something that I just want to press you on a bit. You don't think the president will finish out his term. Is that based on any knowledge you have of the kinds of things that Mr. Cohen has done to him, or is it based on your knowledge of the caliber of the kind of NDAs that Mr. Cohen crafted on his behalf?
Well, it's certainly based on both. This is a serious, serious issue for the president. He knows it, Michael Cohen knows it, and the people that are close to him know it.
Let me play something. I know you don't represent Ms. McDougal, but this pattern of hush money is something you and I have talked about on multiple occasions. So let me play you something that he said and ask you to respond.
The importance of this story is that Karen came forward, she got out of the contract, and other people, because I am sure there are other people, whether it's with Trump or others, that they should know that they can come forward and there are people out there who will represent and support them. To me, that's more important than kind of the political overtones.
One of our early conversations was about just that, and if you could just give us the latest number of women that have come forward now that you are in this line of work of representing women who were or believe that they were restrained by non-disclosure agreements. Have more women come forward? Are more women hearing this message that you and Mr. and Karen McDougal's attorney are sort of communicating, that women should know they can come forward and there are people who will represent them and support them?
There's no question. I mean, I think that message has been received, and it continues to be received, and we continue to field additional calls and inquiries from additional women. But again, we're in the process of vetting those. I'm not in a position to vouch for their credibility. I'm going to be very careful in what I say in that regard. But I generally agree with those statements.
So let me ask you a weedsy legal question that may be beyond my depth here. But Ms. McDougal's attorney also said that part of the owner of National Enquirer, AMI's motion to dismiss Ms. McDougal's case was to avoid pretrial discovery. The move would compel both sides to share emails and other records. It could have provided information that would not be available through the material the FBI seized from Mr. Cohen. How much of the actions you've seen since the raid do you think come from fear of all of these parties? Everyone, we started talking about some of the tools in the president's arsenal failing him, the system of catch and kill at the National Enquirer, the kind of NDA that your client Stormy had. How are these tools holding up?
Well, I think the tools are deteriorating by the moment, and I think that panic has begun to set in, and for good reason. If I was the president, I would be incredibly panicked at this point, and it's only going to get worse. You know, I want to go back and touch on the McDougal settlement. You know, I think the settlement was too friendly to AMI personally. I think she could have done far better. I think that they should have waited it out and engaged in some discovery. As it relates to our case, we're not going to settle this case under any circumstances. I want to reiterate this. We are not going to settle this case under any circumstances that do not involve Mr. Cohen and the president coming 100% clean with the American people about what happened, what he knew, when he knew it, and the list goes on. We're just not going to do it. It's never going to happen. So if Michael Cohen and the president are counting on that happening and us not getting to the bottom of it, they shouldn't, because it's never going to happen.
Are you saying that you will never stop short? Are you saying you want to take Mr. Cohen and the president's deposition? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, what I'm saying is we're going to see this case through to conclusion. It's going to include both of their depositions under oath. We are going to get to the bottom of this. All the facts. We're not going to be bought off.
Do you really think you're going to take the president's deposition, the president of the United States?
Absolutely.
Bob Mueller can't even get an interview. No offense, but you're no Bob Mueller.
Well, actually, I think I am a Bob Mueller, but I'll push back on that. I don't think I'm better than Bob Mueller, but, you know, I'll put my skill set up against anybody. But, yeah, I do think we're going to take those depositions. We're not going to be bought off. This is bigger than that. We've been saying that for weeks, and if people have been watching, they know it's bigger than that. This is a search for the truth, and we are going to get to the bottom of this, period.
Is it part of your search for the truth to say something about Mr. Cohen that really struck me as strategic? For all of your harsh words about the president, and you've been critical of Mr. Cohen's legal acumen, but today you described him as a devoted father. Are you trying to send him a signal, you know, hey, man, it is not worth going to jail for this guy? Is that your personal belief?
Well, absolutely, that's my personal belief. I especially don't think he should go to jail for the president in light of the way the president has treated him over the last 18 months. I mean, he left him behind in New York. He didn't do anything for him as it relates to giving him a spot in the administration. He basically blew him off and kicked him to the curb. And now the guy's going to leave his family and his kids and potentially go serve time for the president. The president's not loyal to Michael Cohen. Why should Michael Cohen be loyal to the president? But I meant what I said when I called him a devoted father. I understand he's an exceptional father. I understand he's a good husband. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter. I mean, why should he serve time and stick up for a guy that effectively blew him off?
And I've picked up some of this too. He did have a hope, I don't know if it was an expert, but he did have a hope that he'd be brought down to Washington and rewarded for his loyalty. So did Chris Christie and Rudy Giuliani, for that matter.
He was rewarded. He was rewarded with 3 FBI raids, but go ahead.
Let me ask you just to step back, because your predictions have pretty much all come true. So let me ask you to do a little bit of gazing in the crystal ball. What do you think is coming next in terms of the matters that were referred to the Southern District? There's been a raid. You're back in court on Monday on a somewhat separate but related case. Just take us down the multiple legal paths that we're all trying to cover here in the media.
I think within the next 3 months, an indictment will be handed down for Michael Cohen, a serious indictment that will have a number of charges carrying a significant amount of time. I think Michael Cohen will then go through the process, if you will, that your other guest, the former U.S. attorney, described that many defendants go through. At first, he'll be very defiant, and he'll say that he's not flipping, and then that belief will wane over time, and he will begin to face reality, and he will ultimately turn on the president. And I think, again, I'm going to say it right now, I do not believe this president will serve out his term. That's how serious I think this is.
And let me just get you on the record one more time. You know I meant no offense when I said you know Bob Mueller. What needs to happen before you are in a position to depose the president of the United States in the matter between your client, Stormy Daniels, and the president?
The Honorable James Otero needs to rule on our pending motion, which is set for the first 2 weeks of May.
All right, and we trust that you come back, that you keep us posted.
Thank you.
Michael Avenatti.
What are you waiting for? Do it! Just do it!